Hello, everybody, and welcome to our next instalment of Member in the Spotlight. And it's my great pleasure today to introduce Rob Brown, who heads up Fruit2Work. And I'll start off by saying thank you, Rob, for being our monthly sponsor this month at the Chamber. And you're certainly a character, and I hope our members pick that up as we discussed today. But welcome, Rob, and thank you. Tell us a little bit about Fruit2Work. It's an amazing story.
Sure. Well, thanks, Ben, and hello, everybody. I guess I've been called a character before, and I'm hoping that it's a character in the positive sense of the word, unlike some other people who refer to me as a character in the negative sense of the word. But yeah, a little bit of the backstory of Fruit2Work. I mean, Fruit2Work's been running for 5 years now, and there are lots and lots of statistics I can throw about what Fruit2Work has done. But one of the most striking is the fact that in 5 years of transitionally employing people who have been impacted by the justice system, we've had nobody reoffend. And when you consider in Victoria, the rate of reoffending, or recidivism, as it's referred to in legal terms, is 47% within 2 years. So half the people released from prison today will be back in prison in less than 2 years. Now, that's actually one of the worst rates of reoffending in the world.
So how does Fruit2Work help?
Well, we help simply by giving people a job as they exit the justice system, and by creating an environment where they either acquire or reacquire the skills to reintegrate with society again at a meaningful level. There's a lot of, I guess, myth and anecdotal evidence thrown around about recovery in prison and rehabilitation in prison. The reality is, it's proven by evidence that it really doesn't matter how much rehabilitation you do in prison unless society is willing to accept you as a human being again. And Fruit2Work sort of helps people regain those skills, and just as importantly, regain the simple skills of what it's like to work again, so that they can then transition into full-time employment with another employer. So our job is to effectively become a stepping stone. It's not to become an employer forever. And we've transitioned in the 5 years. We've transitioned about 50 people. Wow. And that rate is accelerating because it's a really simple volumetric business. The more customers we have, and the more fruit and milk and coffee and tea and other stuff that we deliver to customers, the more people we employ. And the more people we employ, guess what? The less people reoffend. And if I do that quick maths and say that if we've had 50 people transition, half of which would have reoffended under normal circumstances, which would give us 25 people who have not reoffended, the saving to the taxpayer is about $12.5 million. Now, that's based on a figure of roughly $400,000 a year to lock somebody up. Now, some people will quote a number of $170,000 or $180,000. That's only room and board, as we refer to it. That does not include the cost of the system that sits around both the front end of the system in terms of arresting people and taking them through the court, and the back end of the system, which is effectively supporting them or trying to support them as they come back out through Centrelink and so on. And if you take the total cost, then you get to a number, I think it was quoted by the Jesuits, of about $420,000 a year to lock somebody up.
And that's not even taking into account the impacts on families and communities associated, which is long term, and that's amazing. So 50 people have been through the system. Tell me, how do they feel about working for you and the benefits they get out of it?
I think, obviously, it's better hearing that from them, and we can do that at some point. I think the one thing you would hear unanimously from all of them is that we suspend judgment. So we don't judge people based on their past. We judge people based on where they are today and where they're trying to get to. So there's no judgment applied, and there's no stigma, because if you speak to ex-offenders, there's a stigma attached to ex-offenders by society. I think we all understand that. But what people sometimes don't understand is that ex-offenders also apply a stigma to themselves. So they walk around with what they think is a sign on their head saying, I'm an ex-offender. And it takes a long time for some people to get rid of that chip, if you want to call it that, on their shoulder, or that stigma. And I think all of them would say that one of the things that Fruit2Work helps them do is get over that stigma issue. And the fact that we suspend judgment allows them to be themselves and be accepted into, we call it a family. Now, I'm not sure it's a family, but there is an environment here which is much more accepting of people's previous behaviour than most other organisations would be.
Mm-hmm. And tell me, you've worked with 50 people coming out of the justice system. How many clients do you have that you're delivering fruit and coffee and milk to?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, on our books, we've got about 400 customers. Now, COVID obviously has switched some of them off because a lot of them had stood down because of working from home, but they're gradually coming back. But the reason that we are obviously focused on this conversation in Geelong is that for a long time, we've understood that Geelong has got as big a problem, if not a bigger problem, than some other parts of Victoria in terms of reoffending. And we made the conscious decision that it's probably better to be in Geelong, working with people in Geelong, giving the benefit to the people in Geelong, than it is trying to do it from outside Geelong. And because of that, we formed a partnership with an organisation called The Power in You, which has allowed us to understand Geelong a bit better. And then obviously tied up and collaborate with the guys at the Chamber, which has been a tremendous benefit to us in terms of getting exposure, because your access to a network which has already been tried and tested by you, we get access to that just by being a member of the Chamber, which is really, really beneficial to us.
I've seen you at quite a few events since we started again in December, and Carolina and Simon and yourself. So generally speaking, what do businesses do? Do they have a need for fruit in the workplace and tea and coffee, and don't have time to organise that themselves and want to help out?
Yeah, it's almost as simple as that. Most organisations in today's world will provide, they'll certainly provide milk. Now, they don't all provide fruit, but some do, some don't. And we take away two things. We take away the hassle of having to do that yourself. And people will sometimes say, well, we just send somebody to Coles to get milk and fruit. Yeah, you probably do. But what you don't often do is do the arithmetic, which says, well, how much does it actually cost me to send somebody to Coles to pick up some fruit and milk? And if you take $50 an hour, right, you've just charged yourself $50 plus whatever it's cost you for the fruit and milk to actually organise it. So it takes away that hassle. And secondly, because we do it as a service, it's done on time every time. So somebody doesn't have to remember about doing it. And the number of customers that we come across where it's somebody's job to go to Woolworths and pick up fruit and milk, and sometimes they forget and they're on their way to work and they think, oh God, I forgot to get the milk. It takes away that hassle. And interestingly enough, there are some organisations, certainly infrastructure sites, but it's actually written into the EBA that there has to be a certain volume of milk on site every day in order to satisfy people's requirements for coffee and tea. So again, we take away the hassle of worrying about that because we make sure that your level of milk is sustained every day.
Yep.
So it's really about providing a service and taking away the hassle and taking away some of the impact from people who are typically time poor, and let us worry about it.
Is there any particular industries that you work best for, and anyone in Geelong you'd like to give a shout out to?
Oh, I mean, our first customer was Kane Construction.
Yep.
Sorry, Norris Construction. Sorry, my apologies. And infrastructure is a big part of our business, and that's primarily because they are focused on social procurement, either because it's in their DNA like Norris, or because there's a government influence that says that in order to win the next tender, there has to be an element of social purpose or social procurement in your bid. So those those organisations tend to be more open to social purpose or social procurement. Having said that, we deliver to everywhere from a dentist to the Westgate Tunnel. So the range of customers we have is pretty wide, and even the volume. We will deliver to a small organisation 25 pieces of fruit and 4 litres of milk, and to a large organisation we'll deliver 4,000 pieces of fruit and 1,000 litres of it. So we really don't have any boundary around who our customers are, and that's simply because our business is driven by creating chances for people, and therefore the busier we are, aka the more customers we have, then the more chances we can create that allow people to be employed and transitioned through Fruit2Work.
Now you're a humble man. I know you offline, but you have been well praised for the work that you do, haven't you? Especially over the last 12 months, and you might have won some awards along the journey.
Yeah, we won the Social Enterprise of the Year award in 2019, I guess it would be 2019, in the middle of COVID. And you're right. I am not really a great award chasing person, but for the team to be recognised for what they've done during COVID was great. Our revenue dropped by 70% in 48 hours because the city was effectively emptied overnight. That's where a large portion of our customer base was. And I guess like lots of organisations, when you're hit with that level of change, you either sit in your hand and say, well, we'll just have to weather it and see what happens, or you say, let's try and do something different. And I hate using this word because everybody uses it. We pivoted into an organisation that effectively just became a logistics organisation for primarily other social enterprises. So we done a huge amount of work for the Asylum Seeker Research Centre, and we became part of a consortium called Moving Feast. And you may recall that when the Commission housing towers in Melbourne were locked down overnight, that was a really severe impact on those people. We delivered 2,500 boxes of fruit and veg within 48 hours to those people who had no access to food. So by getting involved in that kind of activity, which is outside our normal scope of work, we managed to stay alive and in fact sustained ourselves during the pandemic, which has been fantastic.
And you've had a successful 5 years, Rob. What does the next 5 years look like for Fruit2Work?
Well, we've got a very simple strategy, which is to generate $5 million of revenue, and by doing that, transition 50 people a year through Fruit2Work. Because that's roughly, there's no direct correlation, but that's a rough correlation. If we were doing $5 million of revenue, then we'd be able to transition 50 people a year through Fruit2Work back into society again, with hopefully now the zero reoffending number astounds me, because I honestly expected some level of reoffending, because every other program in the world that we've looked at, which deals with only ex-offenders, there's a level of recidivism. The fact we've had zero, there's probably a bit of luck and there's probably a lot of hard work in it, but I would expect some level of reoffending to take place as we go forward and we get bigger, and obviously we deal with more people. But even at 10%, that's 4 times better than the current rate of recidivism in the state. So if we can transition 50 people through Fruit2Work and 45 of them don't reoffend, to me that'd be a pretty remarkable statistic to go with. And who knows where we go after that. Now there's lots of people have spoken to us about do we go interstate and do New South Wales and Queensland, and maybe we do. But my simple view of business is get it right first and then expand it. Because moving a model which is imperfect is usually a recipe for disaster. So the focus has been to get the business scalable in Victoria, get the systems and back office stabilised so that we know that we can grow in a sustainable way. And when we've ticked all those boxes, then that maybe will be the time to go and look at interstate.
Yeah. Well, it's a fantastic cause, Rob, and over the month we'll let our members know how to get involved, and we'll teach them more about what you do. But how would a member get involved today, and where would they go to get fruit, coffee, and milk delivered?
Very easy. All you have to do is go to your accounts at fruit2work.com.au and send a quick email saying you're interested, and we'll come back to you within 24 hours. Or go on the website, which is www.fruit2work.com.au, and do the same thing. And within 24 hours, somebody will contact you. And the process is really simple. It is really bureaucracy light. You don't have to fill in 100 forms. We don't do any credit referencing, any of that nonsense. We take people at face value. No lock-in contracts, and within 24 hours, you'll be having your fruit milk delivered without you having to worry about the hassle of doing it.
Fantastic. Rob, thank you for joining us today. We'll hear more from you over the month, and have a great day.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, everybody.